What's up, guys? This is Chris from draftdashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Saturday, July 24th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 10-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the pitcher position. I like Luis Castillo with an 8% pitching advantage over the St. Louis Cardinals. Luis Castillo, he pitches his best ball versus righty batters, only giving up a .624 OPS versus righties, and he's facing 7 righties here tonight. On top of that, the Cardinals have only hit 36 of his last 144 pitches. That's a .250 batting average with a huge sample size. He's $8,600 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,100 less on DraftKings. Projected at 25.8 fantasy points here tonight. Now, he has an ERA of 4.39, which isn't great, and his record is only 3-10 on the season, but he's pitching an average of 93 pitches per game and averaging 26 fantasy points per game, but he scored 46, 31, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games, so he's been on fire. He's got a great matchup here tonight, so I like Luis Castillo here versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. I like Joey Votto with a 23% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Jake Woodford. Joey Votto is batting 22% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .871 OPS versus righties, and Jake Woodford, he's giving up a .837 OPS versus lefties. He pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters just by a hair, and Joey Votto is 1 for 2 with a 1 OPS versus Woodford. He's $3,100 FanDuel salary and $1,600 more on DraftKings. Projected at 9.5 fantasy points here tonight. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 22, 3, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And I like this pick because Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Joey Votto here versus Jake Woodford. Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I got a value play for you. I like Nicky Lopez with a 42% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Casey Mize. Nicky Lopez, he bats 10% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .637 OPS versus righties, and Casey Mize, he throws 32% worse to lefties as he does righties, giving up a .845 OPS versus lefties. Now I like this pick because Nicky Lopez is 3 for 8, batting a .375 batting average and a .819 OPS versus Mize. And he's only $2,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,600 more on DraftKings. Projected at 7.6 fantasy points here tonight. He's averaging 7 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 0, 16, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And I like this pick because Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 10 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Nicky Lopez as a value play here versus Casey Mize. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I'm going to give you another value play. I like Joey Wendell with a 64% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, JC Majaya. Joey Wendell is batting 26% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .824 OPS versus righties. And JC Majaya, he pitches his worst ball by far to lefty batters. 38% worse than his pitch to righties, giving up a 1.002 OPS versus lefties. Joey Wendell is 1 for 2 with a 1.5 OPS versus Majaya. He's only $2,700 FanDuel salary. He's $1,600 more on DraftKings. Projected at 9.3 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored at 10, 0, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Joey Wendell here versus JC Majaya. I also like Justin Turner, batting against a low salary pitcher, Kyle Freeland. Justin Turner is batting a .811 OPS versus lefties, and Kyle Freeland is giving up a .817 OPS versus righties. Now, the splits aren't ideal here. They aren't the best splits in the world, but Justin Turner has hit 13 of his last 32 pitches. That's a .406 batting average and a 1.034 OPS versus Freeland. So he's got a fantastic batter versus pitcher matchup here, and he's $3,700 FanDuel salary and $1,900 more on DraftKings. Projected at 10.7 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 28 and 13 fantasy points in the last 2 games. So I like Justin Turner here versus Kyle Freeland.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, who do we have at the shortstop position? Here's another value play for you. I like Thairo Estrada, batting against a low salary pitcher, Will Crow. Thairo Estrada, he's batting a .657 OPS versus righties, and Will Crow is giving up a 1.062 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Crow yet, but I like this pick because Thairo Estrada is only $2,400 FanDuel salary and only $900 more on DraftKings. Projected at 8.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 10, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Thairo Estrada here versus Will Crow. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I like Jesse Winker with a 29% batting advantage over that low salary pitcher, Jake Woodford. Jesse Winker bats 28% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .968 OPS versus righties. And Jake Woodford, he's giving up a .837 OPS versus lefties. Jesse Winker is 1 for 4 with a .250 batting average and a .500 OPS versus Woodford. That one hit was a single. He's $3,600 FanDuel salary, and he's only $900 more on DraftKings. Projected at 11 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored a 9, 0, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Jesse Winker here versus Jake Woodford. I also like Michael Brantley with a 45% batting advantage over Kyle Gibson. Michael Brantley bats 30% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .940 OPS versus righties. And Kyle Gibson, he throws his worst ball versus lefty batters, 15% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .808 OPS versus lefties. Michael Brantley is 13 for 38 with a .342 batting average and a .879 OPS versus Gibson. He's only $3,100 FanDuel salary and $500 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites, and he's projected at 11.1 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 10, 0, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Michael Brantley here versus Kyle Gibson. I also like AJ Pollock. Here's another good value play. AJ Pollock has a 14% batting advantage over that low salary pitcher, Kyle Freeland. AJ Pollock bats 21% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.014 OPS versus lefties, and Kyle Freeland is giving up a .817 OPS versus righties. AJ Pollock is 9 for 25, batting a .360 batting average and a 1.149 OPS versus Freeland. He's only $2,600 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,400 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 10, 3, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like AJ Pollock here versus Kyle Freeland. I also like Christian Yelich with a 63% batting advantage over Carlos Rodon. Christian Yelich is batting 17% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .881 OPS versus lefties. And Carlos Rodon, he throws 46% worse to lefties as he does righties, giving up a .837 OPS versus lefties. Christian Yelich is 2 for 7 with a .286 batting average and a 1.143 OPS versus Rodon. One of those hits is a home run and the other one is a double. He's $3,400 FanDuel salary. He's $900 more on DraftKings, projected at 12.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 9, 13, and 0 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Christian Yelich here versus Carlos Rodon. I also like Andrew Benintendi with a 45% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Casey Mize. Andrew Benintendi is batting 14% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .609 OPS versus righties. And Casey Mize, he pitches 32% worse to lefties as he does righties, giving up a .845 OPS versus lefties. I like this pick because Andrew Benintendi is 3 for 6, batting .500 with a 1.5 OPS versus Mize. And he's only $2,800 FanDuel salary. He's $1,300 more on DraftKings, projected at 10.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 3, 16, and 4 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Andrew Benintendi here versus Casey Mize.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.